Admit it, you've walked into your kitchen, caught a whiff of something that smells suspiciously like stinky feet, and for a split second, you're not sure if you skipped a few showers or if something in your kitchen has officially turned. You start sniffing around, opening the fridge, checking the containers, and then it hits you. It's not you, it's food you meant to use but didn't. Not because you're careless, and not because you forgot on purpose. It just quietly adds up. And that's how most food waste happens, one forgotten item at a time. And before you know it, money is literally going in the trash. So today, we're going to be sharing some simple food saving habits that can help your groceries last longer and save you money, including a few that I learned completely by accident. And one of those accidents turned out to be a surprisingly good win. The brown sugar accident that changed everything. So one day, I opened up a bag of brown sugar, used what I needed, and put it away. Only problem was, all I had was a freezer slider bag to store it in, so I figured, why not? I tossed the open bag of brown sugar into the freezer bag, sealed it up, and put it back in the pantry. Weeks later, I opened it fully expecting a brick. You know how it does. Instead, it was perfect. Soft, scoopable, no rock hard sugar block in sight. I was completely blown away, and I've stored it that way ever since, and it works every single time. Now that little tiny win got me thinking, if something that simple could make that big of a difference, what else was I storing wrong without realizing it, especially when it came to bigger, more expensive items? Wrapping meat the right way to prevent freezer burn. Now let's talk about meat for a second, because freezer burn is one of the biggest food money leaks out there. If you ever bought meat in bulk, especially something like a big pack of hamburger, you know the fear. You don't want ice crystals, weird texture, or that grayish look that makes you hesitate to use it. Now this is something I learned after buying a large amount of ground beef and wanting it to actually stay good. I came across a video where someone was explaining how they wrapped meat, and it was possibly game meat, but the method made sense, so I tried it with hamburger. Here's what worked. First, wrap your meat tightly in plastic wrap and make sure there are no air gaps. Place that wrapped portion into butcher paper and then seal it again. Now this double layer is key. The plastic wrap will keep your air out, and the butcher paper protects it from freezer exposure. Since doing it this way, I don't get ice buildup, and the meat comes out looking the same as the day that it went in. Now, this is one of those habits that feels a little extra at first, but when you're pulling out meat months later and it still looks great, totally worth it. And once I started paying attention to how food will hold up over time, I realized a lot of waste doesn't even happen in the freezer. It actually happens before food ever makes it there. Freezing food before it's bad instead of after. Now this sounds obvious once you hear it, but most of us wait too long. We tend to freeze food when we already feel like we're racing against the clock. But that's when produce gets mushy, bread gets stale, and leftovers feel sad. A better habit is freezing your food when it's still good, especially if you know you're not going to use it in time. That bunch of peppers that's starting to wrinkle, chop them up and freeze them. Bananas getting spotted, peel them and freeze them. Onions that you didn't finish, dice and freeze. Frozen produce doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to be usable later for soups, sauces, stir fries, or smoothies. The main thing about this is you want to think of your freezer as a pause button and not a last ditch rescue. Now, produce isn't the only thing that sneaks up on us. Some of the items that quietly go bad are the ones that we don't think twice about, and this one tends to fly under the radar. Freezing cheese, yes, even block cheese. Shredded cheese freezes really well. Most people know that, but block cheese, that one surprises a lot of people. You can absolutely freeze block cheese. Now the texture might change slightly once it's thawed, but for cooking, melting, casseroles, or shredding, it works just fine. Now if you've ever had half a block of cheese mold before you could finish it, this habit alone silicone is going to save you some money. All you have to do is cut it into smaller portions, wrap it well, and then freeze what you're not going to use soon. Same goes for shredded cheese. If you're not going to use the whole bag within a few days, all you have to do is freeze part of it for later. And then there's the food we actually did cook, fully intending to eat it again until life happened. Portion freezing leftovers instead of one big container. Leftovers are another sneaky food situation. It's not that we don't like leftovers, it's that we don't always want a full plate of the same thing again. Freezing leftovers in one big container makes them feel like a commitment. Instead, freeze them in single or smaller portions, and then that way you can grab exactly what you need. Lunch for one, a quick dinner, and then something easy when you don't feel like cooking. This simple shift will turn your leftovers into a convenience instead of a chore. Now, once I started freezing food in smaller, more intentional ways, it made me rethink a lot of the items that I automatically keep on the counter or in the fridge. Freezing tortillas, buns, and bread. This one deserves a moment because how many times have you bought tortillas, used half the package, and then found the rest dried out or moldy? Tortillas freeze awesome. So do buns, rolls, and bread. The key is separating what you won't use right away before freezing, and then that way, all you have to do is just pull out a few at a time instead of thawing the whole package. And for tortillas, a simple trick is to place a piece of parchment or wax paper between them. Now, this is going to keep them from sticking and makes it easy to grab what you need. Now, most of these items can go straight to the oven, the toaster, or a pan without even thawing first. And once I got comfortable freezing things like that, it made me rethink how I handled liquids also, saving broth with ice trays. Now, broth is another thing that gets wasted a lot. You open a carton, use what you need, and then feel rushed to use the rest of it before it goes bad. A simple solution here is freezing your broth in ice trays. Silicone if you have them because they're easier to pop out. So once they're frozen, all you have to do is transfer the cubes to a freezer bag. This works really great for recipes that only need a little bit of broth, like sauteing vegetables or adding flavor to your rice. Not only is it simple, it's flexible, and no more pouring your broth down the drain. And if you ever bought something to flavor your food only to watch it slowly die in the fridge, you already know where this is going. Herbs that actually last. No doubt, fresh herbs can get expensive, and they seem to go bad the second that you bring them home. One option that you can do is chop your herbs and then freeze them in small portions, either plain or with a little bit of oil if you plan to cook with them. Another option is storing certain herbs upright with a little bit of water and then loosely covering them in the fridge. Either way, herbs don't have to be a one recipe purchase ever again. Now, not everything freezes perfectly, but it can still have its place if you know how you're going to use it. Freezing milk and dairy. Okay, let's be honest here. Freezing milk is a mixed bag. Yes, you can freeze it. Yes, it's safe, but the texture does change. Now, if you plan to use it for cooking, baking, or adding to recipes, it's going to work just fine. For drinking straight, it's not exactly everyone's favorite. When you freeze cream half and half of milk, it tends to separate when it's thawed. Now, shaking it up does help, but it's not always the same. This is one of those know how you'll use it situations. So if freezing milk is going to save you from wasting it, then yes, it could still be worth it. One thing that made all of these food saving habits actually work for me wasn't just how I stored food, but it was also how I kept track of it afterward. Labeling food to save it from yourself. This might sound small, but labeling really matters. If you pull something out of the freezer and don't know what it is, or most importantly, how old it is, chances are you're not going to use it. A simple label with what it is and roughly when it went in can be the difference between eating it and tossing it. And finally, probably the biggest food saving habit of all isn't about storage, it's about intention. End of the week, use what you have meals. Now, this is about planning one night a week to use what you already have. So we're talking soups, soups, stir fries, casseroles, and skillet meals, which are perfect for using the odds and ends in your refrigerator. And don't worry, this isn't about forcing weird combinations. It's about using up what's already there before going out and buying more. Saving food doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean eating things that you hate or turning your freezer into a puzzle. It's just learning a few habits that help your groceries last longer and your money stretch further. Now, if you try even one of these, that's a win. And if you have your own accidental food saving trick, we'd love to hear it. So please drop it down in the comments, because some of the best tips come from those, well, that worked moments. Until next time, stay thrifty. Peace.